Hi guys, it's Steph from IDRIVEACLASSIC, and today I'm back in this amazing classic VW Beetle. I've never driven one of these before, although many people would tell you on site that my Morris Minor is a Beetle and it's one of my absolute pet hates. So I thought, why not see what the competition is all about and take out a VW Beetle and see if it's really, all the hype that I hear about it is really true. So in this video today, I'm going to show you around the outside, show the inside, show the interior, giving you a little sneak peek now. I'm going to show you under the bonnet because it's not what you think it might be, and then I'm going to show you in what I would call the boot too. So let's take her out and see what she's really like. How exciting. Today we are looking around a VW Beetle, and not one of these boring modern ones, a proper classic VW Beetle. And there's loads to show you today and loads to tell you about, so hopefully I can do this car some justice because this is a real iconic classic I'm taking out. Now, the owner of the car is actually one of my friends, Ian. And it's nice actually sometimes reviewing a friend's car because you can really dig deep and ask some questions and ask what they've been up to. And so Ian and I had a chat about the work he's been doing on this beautiful car. Now, he's owned this car since 2012 and it took him 10 months to get it MOT worthy, and that's 10 months of solid work, you know, evenings, weekends, all around his normal day job, because doing cars up isn't Ian's everyday job. So in a way, this is even more impressive that he's turned this from a rusty, forgotten shell that looked, you know, a bit forgotten, into this amazing bright red Beetle. Now, you've probably noticed the paintwork isn't as good as it could be, and that's just because it was Ian's first paint job and he just wanted to make sure that the metalwork was covered. So he's done a pretty good job, but as you look around, you'll notice there's a few little areas that could be tidied up. And in addition to all of that, he's replaced all the floors, he's replaced the heater channels, all the lower quarter panels, and the doors as well. In fact, one of the doors came from Germany, fun fact for you, and in his own words he said he gutted the entire car. So let's do this car some justice and start by showing you under the bonnet. And there's no engine, and that's because the engine is actually in the boot of these cars, which is pretty crazy. So let's go and have a look at the boot of the car and I'll show you exactly where the engine actually is. I love showing you guys quirky details on cars, and I would say this definitely fits the bill with having the engine in the back. And it all looks pretty straightforward, but it's very strange and I'm struggling to get my head around it. So let's have a look inside. We've had a look around the outside, we've had a look under the bonnet and looked at the engine in the boot, so it's time to have a look inside. And I'm going to start by showing you these amazing door pockets. I love little details like that because things like that are really handy sometimes, especially when you haven't got much inbuilt storage. Now, as we look through this car, you'll notice that it may look a little bit different to what you're used to seeing if you've got a classic Beetle yourself. Things like the stereo, some speakers, and a few extra dials here and there, and a few little modern touches. But all in all, it's still pretty in line with what the manufacturer would have turned out at the time. So I feel like we're still getting a pretty genuine driving experience. So now that we've had a little look around the inside of the car, I think it's high time that we start her up and see what she sounds like. Now we've had a look around the outside of the car, the inside of the car, the boot, or should I say the bonnet, or should I say the boot, all getting very confusing now. But we're now going to start the car so you can hear how she sounds. And for those of you that are a little bit eagle-eyed, or you've got a VW Beetle at home, you'll notice the key isn't where it's supposed to be. So it should be over here, but it's actually down here. But hey, if the car starts, who cares? So let's see if we can start her up. And she sounds really, really nice already. I've heard her coming in through the car park this morning. So we're going to turn the key. Doesn't sound bad, does it? So why don't we take her out on the road and see what she's really like. So we've just set off, and I'm not sure what I think yet. It feels very strange. I'm sat really low. I feel like a child. You know when you see pictures of kids sat in their parents' cars? I feel like I'm sat really low down, and I'm kind of like this, so I can't see over the end of the bonnet. And you'll know if you've watched some of my previous videos that for me is a really big plus point of driving. I like to be able to see all the way to the end, and I can't in this, so I don't feel as confident as I would like to. But first impressions is is really strange, as the gearbox feels quite stiff. And I was talking to the owner Ian about it, and he said it's because usually with your selector, you've got your gearbox directly down here, but because the gearbox is in the back, it means your selector is kind of 1.5 meters away from from everything else, and basically it just makes everything a little bit stiffer. And I'm finding it quite hard to get my head around. It feels very strange. It doesn't feel like there's a definite place for all the gears, and I think it's probably one of those cars that you have to drive quite a bit to get yourself accustomed and get into the mindset of how it drives. And I don't know. I'm finding it. I do find it quite strange, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, because everybody has a preference for what they like, and I feel like this might be the car that I am actually like, hey, I'm actually finding it quite difficult to drive. But if I'm empathetic in this situation, I remember when I first got the Morris Minor, I couldn't drive that. It's just taking a lot of work to get my head around, but I actually really like that kind of almost like chirrupy engine. I think it's quite sweet, and at first I thought, my god, it sounds like a tractor, but now it's actually quite charming, and the car itself is growing on me, but it's just this gearbox I'm struggling to get my head around. Now, you can probably hear the engine now as we speed up, and I think a lot of people would probably find it a bit like strange, but I quite like an engine that you can hear. I think it adds a bit of character to the car, and the more I drive it, the more it's actually growing on me. At first I was a bit kind of, because I'm not always very good with change, but this is starting to grow on me, and I can see actually why it's kind of an icon. And I think it's one of those cars really that just pulling out there. I think it's one of those cars. Now I've been driving it for a little while, and I feel like the gearbox is getting more and more kind of normal to me. I feel like I'm acclimatising to it, even though it's quite stiff. And I quite like the fact that you're really kind of ramming those gears in, and you're getting a real kind of, it feels very sturdy, in fact. Sometimes I do get in cars and they feel quite flimsy, and I think, but this feels very well made, actually. You can always tell a car that's been really well made, I think, because you get in and the doors shut well, and you can look at the dash and you can look at the general build of the car, and you can usually tell a well-built car, and this feels actually very well built to me. There aren't any areas of concern where I think, oh, that looks like it would snap easily or anything like that, but it's that era again of those metal dashboards. To me it just makes this car look so much sturdier and tougher, and that is definitely a preference for me. So this is a 1600 engine, and I'm finding that it's keeping up moderately well with traffic. It feels quite slow for a 1600, but as I've already said, with the car being quite sturdy and quite well built, it's not really a surprise that such a heavy car needs a bigger engine, and it's trucking along quite well. Again, it's one of these cars that has great parts availability. It has a huge owners club and following, so it's one of those classics that if you're looking for a classic that you can drive every day, this is definitely one of those cars that you can drive every day, because you've got near 100% on your parts availability. It's a manufacturer that still exists, and there's a lot going for these cars, but the only drawback is the price, because like most classics in the last kind of 5 years, the price has skyrocketed, but now the prices are just they've just gone through the roof. It's absolutely incredible, and they are good cars. They are, in my opinion, I think they are good cars, but I always struggle when you get in a classic that is now worth crazy money. You just think, is it really worth as much as people are asking for and stuff? And I think to a certain extent they are. They are nice cars. It is a good laugh to drive. It's an attractive car to spot in the car park, and it's a really funky car as well. There is no car really that symbolises the hippie movement as much as like your Beetles and your campers and stuff. So in that respect, for its heritage and considering all those bits and pieces, it is worth some of the money. But if I'm being honest, I don't think any of these classics that are marked up to be massive money are worth that at all. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but that's just kind of my opinion on the matter.
Hi, I'm Ian and I've owned this Beetle for 7 years. I bought this 7 years ago because I really fancied doing up a car and I had some spare time. I thought, you know what, I'm going to take the plunge, do it. So I got this. It was blue in colour, it was an absolute heap, and I spent a year welding it all up, getting everything running and putting it through its first MOT in about 8 years. Right, I would recommend, if you fancy a Beetle, give one a go. They're fun to drive. I've had mine for 7 years, so that must prove that, you know, it's worth having for 7 years. And I've enjoyed the ownership every minute of it, and it's even led us to buy other different classic cars. I went for a classic car because I wanted to learn more about the restoration process, the mechanics, etc. Because I don't do any of that in my day job. So what I did was I got a wreck that was more of a wreck than I obviously realised, because, you know, naive first time classic car buyer, and I put it together, got it through its MOT, and I learned a lot doing it. And that was the original reason why I bought a classic car. And then I drove it and I thought, absolutely brilliant, you know, driving around in such an iconic and fun to drive car.
It wouldn't be a VW Beetle review if I didn't mention Adolf Hitler. Now, if you're wondering what the connection is between one of the most hated men ever to live on this earth and these cars, well, let me tell you. So, Hitler set out with a vision, and he wanted a cheap and simple and affordable car to be mass produced for Germans to use on the new Autobahn. And for those of you who aren't aware of what an Autobahn is, it's kind of like a motorway, but there were huge roads that they built to connect Germany up, because Germany is quite a big country. Now, the car was designed by Ferdinand Porsche, and the design was finalised in 1938, and it was called, and I apologise to all my German friends for this terrible pronunciation, the Kraft durch Volkswagen, which translates roughly as strength through joy car. Now, the idea is that Germans would save up stamps to buy the car, almost like almost a bit like a weird scheme that we used to have in Britain for things. And but by the time the cars had been built, World War II had commenced, because that was in 1939, and so production pretty much came to a halt. Now, after World War II, the British Army picked it back up, and they were kind of pivotal in getting the factory back up and running. And in fact, it was offered to the factory, and all the setup was offered to several different manufacturers in the UK, such as Morris and Roots Group. But for Morris, they already had the Morris Minor in the works and things like that. So they said, no, you know, it's not a car that's really going to have the appeal. And yeah, I don't think that was probably the best thing to say, because despite all the naysayers, the model had, well, an incredible mass appeal. In fact, over 20 million of these cars were produced. Now, the model had lots of different changes from the point of conception over the years, you know, to keep up with modern trends and whatnot. And you know, the last big major change coming in the late 60s. Now, these cars were sold for an awful long time, because they were sold in the UK up until 1979, and can you believe it, they were produced in Mexico all the way up to 2003. So, you know, this is a car with a lot of heritage, it's got a lot of history, and yeah, it's been interesting to take it out today. It's not what I expected at all. It's been very different, but sometimes different is a good thing, and I have enjoyed it, despite the fact that I had some really early niggles with the gearbox. And unfortunately, they are out of the, you know, in terms of the prices now, they are out of the reach of most of us. Certainly out of the reach of me. I couldn't afford to get one. But if you can afford one, and you're in a position to try one or take one out for the day, then I would thoroughly recommend it, because this has probably been one of the most fun and unexpected cars that I've reviewed so far. Guys, this is the end of my VW Beetle video, and you know what? At first it took me a little bit to get my head around, and I was a bit like, oh no, I'm never ever going to understand this gearbox. But I quickly got into the spirit of things, and I really actually do see why a lot of people go for these now. My seating position was very strange, but anyway, I digress. It's been a really fun afternoon. The sun has been shining. I've been in a VW Beetle. I've essentially been doing what loads of people would love to do, and I feel so very lucky to have taken this car out. My friend Ian has been an absolute legend having me the keys, and it's time for me to say goodbye. So, if you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed taking this car out in the beautiful Cumbrian countryside, don't forget to hit like, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, make sure you do, because new videos go up every Wednesday and every Sunday, always about classic cars, always good fun, trying out many different vehicles across the UK, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them. But until next time, take care and drive safely.